The Taliban tell the BBC their new government could be announced in the next 48 hours. They claim it will be inclusive and that women will be involved, but only in junior roles.
In this new government which has been announced, in the top posts, I mean to say in the cabinet, they may not be women.
The UK is negotiating with the Taliban in Doha to secure safe passage for British nationals and Afghans still in the country, while the work continues to settle those already here.
This is going to take time. I don't want to pretend that we're going to be able to do this over days or weeks, because, as you say, that there are very large families, but also there's just the number of people.
We'll be live in Kabul and Washington. Also this lunchtime, new research suggests up to 1 in 7 children who catch coronavirus may still suffer symptoms months after infection. The game-changing anti-cholesterol drug that could save 30,000 lives in a decade and may soon be offered on the NHS. Colin Pitchfork, who raped and murdered 2 schoolgirls in the 1980s, has been released from prison. And ITV is cleared by the media regulator over Piers Morgan's comments about the Duchess of Sussex.
And coming up on the BBC News channel, history for David Smith in boccia. He repeats his success from Rio 2016 to become a double Paralympic champion in Tokyo.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. The Taliban have told the BBC that their new government will be announced in the next day or two, but there may not be a woman in any of the top posts or the cabinet. Meanwhile, the UK is in talks with the Taliban to try to secure safe passage out of Afghanistan for remaining British nationals and eligible refugees. Later, the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab will field questions from MPs on the government's handling of the crisis in Afghanistan. Labour claims the UK wasn't suitably prepared to evacuate people from the country. Our first report is from our correspondent Rajini Vaidyanathan.
A nation on the brink of a humanitarian disaster. Now, under Taliban rule. A third of Afghans don't know where their next meal will come from. The UN said nearly half of the country needs help to survive. Supporters of the Taliban have been celebrating the departure of foreign forces. Now the militants have to show how they'll run the country. A senior representative in Qatar told the BBC an announcement on a new government is expected in the next day or two.
In every department of the government, ministries, you can say almost half of the workers are women. So they can come back to their work and they can continue. But maybe in this new government which has been announced, in the top posts, I mean to say in the cabinet, they may not be women.
If women are excluded from top roles, there's concern that decades of progress could be undone. Marzieh Babakale is a former judge who fled Afghanistan for London over a decade ago after the Taliban tried to kill her. She says she doesn't think they've changed.
I have experience with the Taliban because I'm here. I know who they are and the strategy of the Taliban just against the women. I don't know what's happened, what kind of religion they want to just force us and why.
Relics of a 20-year war left at Kabul airport. The Taliban claim it'll reopen in a few days' time. It could give some hope for the Brits and Afghans who worked with them who are still left behind. This taxi driver from Liverpool is one of those stranded. He told the BBC his family are now in hiding.
We can't get out the house. We basically only can go maybe 20, 30 yards into a shop, a local shop. We are in trouble. We need to go.
Some are leaving via Pakistan's border. These images show the desperate scenes last week. The UK government says it's in talks with Taliban representatives in Qatar to discuss how to help those it promised it would.
The focus in that resolution is about preserving and recognising human rights, permitting safe passage through Afghanistan for those who need to move country, and also to prevent terror. That must long-term aim of all the international community with this.
Taliban militia patrol the streets of Kabul, one of the many signs of change. But how will life change for the people of Afghanistan, who've lived through so many chapters of conflict and uncertainty? Virginie Vaidyanathan, BBC News.
In a moment, we'll hear from Gary O'Donoghue in Washington. But first, our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, in Kabul. Lise, bring us up to date, if you would, with what the situation is on the ground and what the Taliban are saying about the new government they're forming.
Yes, they'd always told us that they would not announce a new government until what they call the foreign occupation. The last American soldiers have left, and they have wasted no time. You've heard from the senior Taliban leader, Shehrbaz Staniksai, that it could come in 2 days. And his comments on what does inclusive government mean are not surprising. The Taliban are under pressure from their neighbors, from some Afghans to come up with what they call an inclusive government, including many different factions. But this will be nothing less than a Taliban-dominated government. They believe they have won and that they have the right now to set up their Islamic system. They may include one or another political leaders, but it will be very much on the sidelines. And when it comes to women, we also heard a confirmation from Abbas Staniksai, who of course is one of the negotiators in the Gulf state of Qatar, regarded as the more open-minded Taliban. But even he has made it clear that in their new Islamic system, yes, women will be able to play a role, they'll be able to work, but they cannot lead. They certainly cannot take on the roles that they did in the last government, where they were ambassadors, they were CEOs, they were government ministers, they were senior advisors. They were nothing less than the face of the Islamic Republic. That has ended.
Lise, thank you very much. Gary, now the US has withdrawn from Afghanistan, how are we likely to see American foreign policy change?
Well, in his defiant speech yesterday, defending his decisions and his role in the Afghan withdrawal, Joe Biden also tried to set out a kind of new vision, or the beginnings of a new vision for American foreign policy, talking about what he called the vital national interest, and that would involve not going on these 20-year-long expeditions, not being involved in nation building, simply snuffing out threats where they were present, but not really trying to get involved in creating new civil societies in the image of America. That's a kind of new slant, if you like. It's something he's believed for a very long time, and it's something that will chime with a number of Americans, many of whom believe America spends too much time sending its troops abroad. But if he solved the, in a sense, the military problem here, which he has by no boots on the ground anymore, he will continue to have an Afghan problem here at home, not least because the Republicans will use this against him, effectively accusing him of handing it back to the Taliban over the coming months in the run-up to the next elections. And they're also, many of them on the Trumpian wing, talking about Afghan refugees coming into this country, calling some of them terrorists. And that's something else politically he's going to have to deal with here.
Gary O'Donoghue in Washington, Lise Doucette in Kabul, thank you both. Well, the Home Office has confirmed that Afghans who worked with British forces and the UK government can live here permanently. More than 8,000 were evacuated in the past few weeks. People who are eligible were previously entitled to a 5-year residency. Richard Galpin reports.
It's been called Operation Warm Welcome. Getting as many Afghans who'd worked for the British forces and government out of Afghanistan and permanently settled into the UK. At the moment, many are in hotels in this country waiting for housing to become available, but happy to have escaped the violence.
This area is very good for us. We believe we and our children will have a bright future here, and we are very grateful and indebted to you all.
What's different from Afghanistan is that here women have the same rights as men. Before the chaos, our lives were good in Afghanistan, but here I believe our lives will be better.
Overall, it's estimated the UK has evacuated more than 17,000 people from Afghanistan since mid-August. 8,000 of those under the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy. set up to allow interpreters and others who've worked for the UK to come here. According to the government, a significant number of councils in this country have already offered to provide housing for those in need, but more is required.
We would like to be able to put them into permanent accommodation, but we have to be realistic that the scale of this task is such that we simply don't have permanent housing available that we can offer to people.
Donations of clothing, shoes and other essentials have also been pouring into warehouses, thanks to a campaign by Afghan volunteers living in this country. This also helping new arrivals to settle in.
I came in a similar situation about 20 years ago. I understand how difficult it is for people who have to flee in desperate situation and come here with no language, no support and no family, and they have lost everything. So I fully understand how difficult it is for them.
The government is pledging to provide £20 million to help Afghan children get into schools in the UK and students into universities, and to help those who need healthcare. Richard Galpin, BBC News.
MPs will be questioning the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab about Britain's withdrawal from Afghanistan later this afternoon. Our political correspondent Damien Grammaticus is in Westminster. And Damien, what sort of questions is he likely to face?
I think he's going to face many very serious and very urgent questions from MPs. One of the things I know they want to ask him about is the idea that the Foreign Secretary has said that these events in Afghanistan, the fall of Kabul, was essentially unforeseen and unforeseeable. And I think yesterday he was saying that that was more a failure of intelligence, perhaps from the military side. Some of the MPs are very frustrated about that. They see that as sort of buck passing. They want to know why the Foreign Office, with all its diplomats, was not able in a better position to have a better idea about what was coming in Afghanistan. They point to countries like France that already evacuated hundreds of people in recent months. They also want to ask him about failures during the evacuation. Thousands might have got out, but many, many people, MPs know, tried to contact email helplines, phone helplines, and could not get through, could not get answers. Questions about the hundreds, thousands who are still there now, people like former soldiers trained by the British. How is the UK going to protect them and get them out? Questions about how is the UK going to deal with the Taliban? I think some MPs worried that the UK might be looking to use its leverage with unfreezing funds. They're very concerned about that, and concerned too about the future of UK diplomacy. But above all, I think they're frustrated. They're only going to get an hour to question the Foreign Secretary today in what they think is one of the biggest foreign policy crises this country has seen for decades.
Damien, thank you very much. Although it's long been understood that children are less susceptible to COVID-19 than adults, new research suggests up to 1 in 7 children who catch the virus may suffer from COVID symptoms months after infection. Our health reporter Jim Reid is here. Jim, what's this study saying?
So these are the first findings from what is actually the world's largest study into so-called long COVID in that age group between 11 and 17 years old. Researchers actually asked 7,000 people in that age group to report ongoing health problems and symptoms. Half of that group had tested positive for COVID, the other half had tested negative. Then they look at the difference between those two groups, and 15 weeks after half of that group had tested positive, they were much more likely to report ongoing health problems. So things like fatigue, loss of smell, headaches and so on. And from that, the researchers come out with that figure of up to 1 in 7 children, they think, do have these persistent symptoms. Now, a note of caution, it's very hard to be precise with these studies. They say this is a worst case scenario. And actually, the overall message from the researchers here is parents should be pretty reassured. There is no doubt that these symptoms can be serious in some children, but it's quite rare. And actually, this number, this 1 in 7, is far below earlier estimates for long COVID in that age group.
Jim, thank you very much. A new cholesterol treatment described as a game changer could soon be offered to thousands of people on the NHS in England and Wales. Inclisiran normally costs £2,000 per dose, but the Health Service has negotiated an undisclosed discount with its makers, Novartis, as our health correspondent Dominic Hughes reports.
Heart attacks and strokes are one of the most common causes of death and ill health in the UK, and high cholesterol is a big risk factor. A healthy diet and exercise can help keep cholesterol down, but some people need medication too. Statins, a relatively cheap treatment, work for many, but not all. Now, patients in England and Wales could be offered a new drug called inclisiran. It's a cholesterol-busting injection given twice a year and could help patients for whom statins don't do enough. People like Zena Forster from Newcastle.
I've worked through 4 statins and I'm on my 4th statin now. So this, I guess the thing to say about heart disease is that it's relentless. There's no cure. And I just aim to slow the progress. I think importantly, it gives hope. And hope is a precious commodity when you have heart disease.
More than 2 in 5 people in England have high cholesterol, and 6.5 million adults are currently taking cholesterol-lowering drugs such as statins. NHS England says the new treatment, inclisiran, could save around 30,000 lives within a decade.
There's a huge unmet need, high cholesterol levels, and even in some cases, there are people who are just very vulnerable to even modest levels of cholesterol, and it's a silent killer. So being able to lower that and bring levels down close to the levels that we're actually born with, conveniently and safely, is a complete game changer.
The new drug will be recommended for those who've already had a stroke or heart attack and aren't responding to other cholesterol-lowering treatments. It's already been approved for use in Scotland, but what's described as a groundbreaking deal has now been reached with the manufacturers to make it available in England and Wales as well, potentially saving thousands of lives. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
Double child murderer Colin Pitchfork has been released from prison after a ruling that he was safe to serve the rest of his life sentence on a licence in the community. Our Home Affairs correspondent is Dominic Casciani, and he's with us now. Dominic, how has this come about?
Well, Martine, Colin Pitchfork's murders in the 80s were some of the most notorious crimes of that decade. He killed 2 Leicestershire school and Dawn Ashworth, and when he was jailed in 1988, he was given a life term with a minimum sentence of 30 years. Now, he served 3 years longer than that in practice. So ultimately, a day would come where the parole board would have to decide whether or not at the end of that minimum term, he was safe to be released into the community. And in June this year, the parole board, which is a judge-led process involving prison psychologists, concluded that Pitchfork had completed all of his offending behaviour programs in prison and that he could be safely managed. Now, today he was moved from a prison to a bail hostel where he will start his new life. But the Ministry of Justice is saying very, very clearly that he's under quite tight restrictions, not just the standard ones about where he has to live, but 36 additional requirements, including lie detector tests and also a geographic ban on going anywhere near the scene of his crime. So he starts a new life. But obviously, this is quite a serious moment for the families who have opposed for a very, very long time Pitchfork ever leaving prison.
Dominic, thank you very much. The time is 18 minutes past 1, our top story this lunchtime. The UK is negotiating with the Taliban in Doha to secure safe passage for British nationals and Afghans still in the country. Also this lunchtime, it's just weeks away from Daniel Craig's 5th and final outing with a licence to kill. But can this latest Bond movie help resuscitate the industry after a difficult year?
Coming up on the BBC News Channel, top of the world for Joe Root. The England captain is back as the #1 ranked Test batsman after his century so far in the series against India.
The Mayor of New Orleans has imposed a nighttime curfew to try to stem crime in the wake of the devastation caused by Hurricane Ida. Hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Louisiana are still without electricity, tap water or fuel after the storm hit on Sunday. The number of weather-related disasters has increased 5-fold across the globe over the past 50 years, according to the World Meteorological Organization. Its report says the sharp rise is because of climate change, more extreme weather and better reporting. More than 2 million people are said to have died as a result of over 11,000 disasters in half a century. Our environment correspondent Matt McGrath reports.
As the slow-moving Hurricane Ida pummeled Louisiana in recent days, it caused catastrophic damage and left millions without power. Weather-related disasters like Ida have increased in number in recent decades, according to the World Meteorological Organization. The scientists say the rise has been influenced by climate change, as humans have continued to warm the planet through the use of fossil fuels. In Germany and Belgium earlier this summer, torrential rain saw towns and villages rapidly flooded, sweeping away lives and homes in seconds. Almost half of all the deaths that have occurred in disasters over the last 50 years have been due to water and climate-related hazards, say the experts. The economic impact has also grown far more severe, with damages from weather-related events now costing more than 7 times what they did in the 1970s. But despite the increase in hazards and their power, the good news is that the number of people being killed by storms, floods and droughts has decreased significantly, down by 2/3 over the past 5 decades. The WMO says this is due to improvements in early warning systems that give people more time to move away from danger. However, much more work remains to be done, as only half the world's countries currently have adequate warning networks in place. Matt McGrath, BBC News.
ITV have been cleared by the media regulator Ofcom over Piers Morgan's criticism of the Duchess of Sussex. His comments that he didn't believe what Meghan had said in her interview with Oprah Winfrey in March led to his exit from Good Morning Britain. Our entertainment correspondent Lizo Mazimba joins us now. How did Ofcom come to this decision?
Well, Ofcom has to balance two often competing things: broadcasters' freedom of expression, free speech if you like, and Ofcom's duty to protect audiences from harm. Now, most of the complaints were concerned with two particular areas: Piers Morgan's comments about mental health and suicide, and race. On the first issue, the Duchess of Sussex had talked in the Oprah interview about having had suicidal thoughts and needing help. In response, Piers Morgan said he didn't believe a word that she said. Now, Ofcom did say that in isolation those comments did have the potential to cause harm, but they also took into account the fact that he was robustly challenged by his co-presenter Susanna Reid and ITV's royal editor Chris Shipp, who was also part of the discussion, so that overall ITV had put adequate safeguards in place and the code wasn't broken. Similarly, when it came to the racism, Meghan had said that she felt she'd had racist experiences within the royal family. People felt, complaining that Piers Morgan had denied and belittled this. Again, Ofcom said that this had potential to be highly offensive, but that again Piers Morgan invited comments from other guests on the show who robustly challenged his views, and so that overall again there was no break of the code on this particular occasion. It of course led the following day to lots of discussions, with Piers Morgan walking out of the show and of course later that evening quitting.
Lisa, thank you very much. Nearly 1 in 3 of the world's tree species are facing extinction in the wild. According to a report published by conservationists, oaks, maples and magnolias are among those at risk. Our correspondent Sancha Berg is at Kew Gardens in southwest London, finding out just how serious the threat is. Sancha.
Yes, Martine, I've been looking at some of the species identified as being at risk down here at Kew Gardens, including some extraordinary trees from Madagascar, from what's called the dry forest. Now, they've been particularly affected by logging. Some are close to extinction. They're here at Kew, of course, so they've been conserved, part of the garden's huge programme in this area. But what the authors of this report are concerned about is the number of trees in their own native environment, because a whole ecosystem can depend on them. So the lemurs of Madagascar, for example, depend on those trees just as many other plants and animals do. And as you said, it's not just the exotic trees like that, it's also much more familiar British trees, European trees, that this report identifies as being at risk in their home area. So what they're hoping is the report will alert people to what's actually happening and the fact that many species of tree are at risk, particularly in the countries where they evolved.
Sancha, thank you very much. Great Britain have won their 30th gold medal of the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. It went to David Smith in the boccia, a sport similar to bowls, and there was more GB success on day 8, as our sports correspondent Andy Swiss reports.
He's the man with the colourful hair and the golden touch. A third Paralympic title for David Smith, won in the most thrilling fashion. Boccia is a sport similar to bowls, the aim to get as near the jack as possible. And in the final, Smith was locked at 2-all against Malaysia's Chu Wei Lun. But just when he needed it, a moment of magic.
Oh, nice. Plays that up.
That dazzling shot proved the difference, and soon the tension turned to tears. Another gold for one of the greatest his sport has ever seen. In the pool, meanwhile, could Becky Redfern complete the mother of all comebacks? Barely a year after the arrival of baby Patrick, she was seemingly heading for gold in the 100 metres breaststroke before Germany's Elena Kravtsov edged her out.
And she takes it!
But at a Games she could only compete in because they were postponed, a silver is some feat. Earlier, another of Britain's archers was bang on target. Scunthorpe's Victoria Rumery winning bronze on her Paralympic debut. All the sweeter after what's been such a difficult build-up.
It's been so hard over the last 18 months or so, especially I was in the shielding group as well. When we could finally return to training, it was sort of like cracking on, aiming for Tokyo, saying, hopefully one of these.
There was also British success in the athletics. Wheelchair racer Sammy Kinghorn powering to bronze in the 100 metres for the 25-year-old, a first Paralympic medal. In the table tennis, meanwhile, there were mixed fortunes for Britain's men's teams. One had to settle for bronze after losing to China in their semi-final, while in a different class, it was a different story, as Paul Karabardak and Will Bailey came back from the brink to make it to their final. And if you wondered what that meant, well, this might just give you a clue.
12 times he had lost to Alvaro Valera, but he's just won the biggest match of his life.
Yes, what a victory that was in the table tennis. And I can tell you that in the wheelchair tennis, both Gordon Reid and Alfie Hewitt are through to the semi-finals. Paralympics GB have won 30 gold medals so far at these games. They'll be hoping there's still a few more to come, Martine.
Andy, thank you very much. Andy Swiss reporting from Tokyo. In tennis, the British teenager Emma Raducanu has again shown her ability on the world stage. It's just 4 weeks until the UK premiere of Daniel Craig's fifth and final outing as James Bond in No Time to Die, which has been repeatedly delayed by the pandemic. The final trailer has just been released and it shows all of the high-octane action that Bond fans have come to expect. It comes as a welcome tonic for the UK's cinemas, as Mark Lebel reports.
Come on, Bond, where the hell are you?
Indeed, the world's been waiting quite a while.
Okay.
Barring another screeching U-turn, we're weeks away from witnessing Bond's return out of retirement and into the arms of an old foe.
Now your enemy's my enemy. How did that happen? Well, you live long enough.
After a year in which the pandemic sent the box office into a tailspin with billions of dollars lost, and after that Top Gun Tom Cruise's well-publicised summer trip to see Tenet proved somewhat of a false start, could No Time to Die be the blockbuster that really brings us back to the big screen?
I have to finish this.
The release may also help bolster the box office in its battle with the home sofa. Even though Amazon's takeover of MGM, the Hollywood studio behind Bond, has led some to speculate future releases like this may be fast-tracked to the small screen. That's a sore point for actors who profit from box office bonuses, including Black Widow actress Scarlett Johansson, who's currently in a battle with the Walt Disney Company, unhappy they premiered her film on its streaming service at the same time as in cinemas.
Well, I understand double O's have a very short life expectancy.
But every actor who's played Bond so far has made it safely onto the big screen. All 8 of them, in fact. Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton and Pierce Brosnan. And in the 60s, George Lazenby and David Niven. Not to forget the first Bond in the 50s, Barry Nelson. He was in Casino Royale. So who's odds on to take over from Daniel Craig? Is it that bloke from Bridgerton, Marvel's Kung Fu master, or the man who played Superman? But this Bond has to survive a number of plot twists first.
James, you don't know what this is.
If he does finally find his way to the big screen, we will all find out. The name's Lobel. Mark Lobel, BBC News.
Nicely done. A final thought if you need to fill up the car at the pumps today. A new type of petrol is being rolled out across forecourts. It's called E10. The government says it'll be more environmentally friendly and could cut transport CO2 emissions by 750,000 tonnes per year, which is the equivalent of taking 350,000 cars off UK roads. Time for a look at the weather forecast. Sarah Keith-Lucas has joined us, and some people are telling me they've put the heating on already, Sarah.
Oh, already. Well, I don't know what to say about that, Martine. I think temperatures have been a bit on the cool side, haven't they, for some of us, particularly in the south and the east. But things haven't been changing in a hurry, and that's because we've got a really stubborn area of high pressure with us at the moment. In fact, last night was provisionally the highest August air pressure ever recorded in the UK. That was over 1,038 millibars in the north of Scotland. But stuck underneath that high pressure, lots of grey cloud for most of us. This is the picture in Devon at the moment, Buckland in the moor, and you can see from the satellite and the radar that we have got a lot of cloud draped across the UK. Few spots of drizzle coming out of that cloud. There's Buckland in the moor in Devon, but our second weather watcher picture from Inverness, a very different story. You can see the clear skies across much of Scotland. So beautiful scenes there, blue sky and just a little bit of fair weather cloud. And that's the picture really for much of Scotland for the rest of today. But over the next few days, we'll keep the fairly cloudy theme for most areas. Few spots of drizzle coming out of that cloud and a bit of sunshine around too. If you're on the hunt for the sunshine, it's really across much of Scotland. Few sunny spells for Northern Ireland, northwest England, one or two brighter spells into the far southwest too. But still a bit of a breeze, particularly down the east coast for East Anglia and for the southeast as well. So temperatures generally in the mid-teens around that east coast, but further west in the sunshine, we could see around 23 degrees for the west of Scotland, for instance, this afternoon. Now through this evening and tonight, we've got that cloud which filters its way a little bit further westwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland too. Still a few holes in that cloud, so just about single figures for a few spots, but most of us staying around about 11 to 13 degrees overnight. And tomorrow it's going to be more of the same, so just subtle changes in the weather really over the next few days. Still quite cloudy, still a bit of a breeze, perhaps not as strong as recent days towards the east. So temperatures of 18 or 19 here towards the north and the west of the UK. Again, that's where you'll see most of the sunshine through the day tomorrow. But this area of high pressure staying with us as we head into Friday as well. A lot of cloud once again trapped underneath that descending air with that high pressure overhead. So another cloudy day on Friday. Few holes in that cloud here and there, particularly towards northwest England, perhaps western Scotland as well. Still a bit of a breeze through the English Channel, but perhaps not quite as breezy by the time we get to Friday. So temperatures about 14 to perhaps 22 degrees or so as we look towards Friday. Into the weekend then, and high pressure still with us, but it tries to just nudge away towards the east. We've got lower pressure trying to move in from the west, but before it gets there, looks like that high pressure once again wins out. So plenty of dry weather as we head towards the weekend, and you may even notice those temperatures starting to creep up. Martine.
Relief all round. Sarah, thank you. A reminder of our top story. The UK is negotiating with the Taliban in Doha to secure safe passage for British nationals and Afghans still in the country, while the work continues to settle those already here. That's all from the BBC News at 1, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC News teams where you are.